Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear brothers and sisters, welcome to Youth Challenges. I'm your host, Faizan Mahmood, and I'm back with another engaging topic. Today's topic is on social media. In particular, the influence that social media has had on the youth in this day and age. We're going to look at some of the positive effects, but more so some of the negative effects. And to help us in this discussion, we have with us a very learned man, Mr. Mahtab Aziz, in the studio. Mr. Aziz, thank you very much for joining us. Assalamu alaikum. So, Mr. Aziz, today's topic is on social media.
Yeah.
In particular, there is widespread concern that social media is an advocate for all evil. Perhaps that is a dramatic statement. Perhaps it is not. But in any case, that is the belief of many viewers. And we've had a lot of concerned parents, a lot of concerned teachers, a lot of concerned mentors, a lot of concerned imams and mosque teachers, as well as students and young people alike, that social media is a massive distraction, that it's caused a lot of negative influences on everyday life. Now, thinking back 2 years ago, social media, it kind of emerged all of a sudden. You know, we had Facebook come along, then we had Instagram and Snapchat and Twitter, and now, which seems to be one of the most popular ones, is actually TikTok. And these social media platforms have really developed over the last few years. And so has the amount of people actually using these platforms. That's what makes it such a big topic, and that's what makes it such a big topic today. And often, Mr. Aziz, we talk about many things on our show. We speak about materialism, we can speak about relationships prior to marriage, and regardless of what it is, the discussion always lands on social media because it has a role to play in almost every scenario. So what I'm trying to say is that social media is everywhere in our daily lives. And there is no doubt that it is very addictive. A lot of people use social media excessively, especially young people. So in your opinion, Mr. Aziz, what is it that makes social media so addictive that young people are just so lost in it?
Well, social media, I always say, is a bit like money.
Mm-hmm.
You can use it for good or for bad. And it's entirely down to the user. And I think social media can be a source of knowledge and a source of information. It can alert people to things that are, that may be dangerous, that they should be aware of. In these sort of aspects, yes, it can be useful and good. But where the problem arises is where young people cannot limit their use of it. So you often find that perhaps for many hours they're on social media and they're scrolling through their mobile phones when they could be doing something more productive. So essentially it comes down to, first of all, it takes up a lot of their time. And then you have the aspect of what is it that they're actually looking at.
Yeah.
And that can be, very negative. And for that reason, certain governments, such as the Australian government, have actually now imposing a ban on young people from actually accessing Android phones and phones that allow them to access these social media platforms. So it is a very live and a very important issue, because many parents have expressed great concern over the use of social media. So it really boils down to a combination of what can the government do, what can parents do in their roles, and how can all this be then available for young people to use. And young people themselves have to be able to distinguish whether their use is beyond what is necessary in terms of timing. And also, of course, the subject matter. Is the subject matter something which they should be looking at? So all these issues are relevant.
Definitely, Mr. Aziz, and I feel that you've summed up quite a few issues there in a very articulate manner. And one thing you've focused on a great deal is the term necessary and distraction. And I will be lying if I said that my use of social media is definitely excessive. It is not necessary. I spend a lot of time on social media that I shouldn't be spending on social media. And it's because, in my own honest opinion, it is very addictive, especially TikTok. TikTok, I don't know whether it's designed in such a manner where the algorithm makes it addictive, but you can flick through that app for hours.
Yes.
For hours.
Yeah.
And what I found is, if I think back to when I was studying, social media was a big distraction for me. I would study for about 20, 25 minutes, and then I'll give myself a break.
Yeah.
And during this break, I'd go through social media. So that break, which was supposed to be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it can navigate itself to an entire hour.
Yeah.
And there I found myself distracted. And what happens is it distracts you not only from your studies, it interferes with your train of thought.
Yeah.
So if, for example, you're in the middle of drafting an article or in the middle of drafting an assignment or an essay, you're following a particular train of thought. The moment you pick up your social media, your mobile phone, and you're flicking through it, you've now distracted yourself from whatever it was that you were working on. And that is one of the biggest downsides to social media, is the fact that it is so distracting. And you mentioned there, Mr. Aziz, that young people, well, not just young people, even adults alike, should limit their use of social media to what is necessary. Now, one of the questions that I actually wanted to ask today is because one thing that I've noticed in my own assessment is that there is a gap in particular age groups. If, for example, you come across someone between the ages of, let's say, 28 upwards, and you meet them for the first time, of course, some people naturally have different personalities. However, broadly speaking, from a generic perspective, if you meet someone 28 and above, you will find that person is actually better at communicating with you.
Yeah.
They're more confident, they're more conversational. Whereas if you meet someone under the age of, let's say, 25, 24,
Yes.
whose perhaps use of social media is more extensive and who had social media available more so during their teenage years, their level of communication with you is slightly lacking in comparison to those of slightly older age groups. Now, that's my personal assessment.
Yes.
How do you think, Mr. Aziz, social media has impacted daily interactions in real life?
No, I think you're certainly correct in that. And I think the reason for that is because social media has come to the fore much more recently. So those people that are older, they would have been less exposed to it, and their knowledge and the way they do things would be based upon sort of social media coming onto the scene. So yes, I think so. So there in itself is a good example of actually the negative effects of social media, and I find that a lot of young people these days their vocabulary is very limited. Mm-hmm. They cannot string together 2 long sentences. It seems as if they're talking in like text speak. Mm-hmm. There's sort of short words, and a lot of them have this like strange accent, which I don't know where they've got it from. It's like a mixture of American and sort of South London together, sort of, and you see them speaking a certain way, and it's just not good for them, because I think when an employer interviews these young people, I think they're not going to be impressed at all. And this is something which a lot of young people need to bear in mind, that there's so much competition for jobs these days, that if you are used to playing around with social media, that's going to come out in your interview, and most likely that you'll not get that job, or most likely you may not get that course that you're trying to apply for. So I think, as I said before, social media is something which can be used for good or can be used for bad. At the moment, it looks like it's mostly the latter, in the sense it seems to be being used for the wrong reasons, and this has had a very negative effect on young people.
Definitely, and I entirely agree with you there. And it's taking an effect on various aspects of a young person's life. Not only is it affecting their education, their careers, their family life, their friendships, also, for many married couples, it's affecting their relationships, because the level of communication has significantly decreased, and a lot of people would much rather spend time on social media. And one thing I'd like to mention is I've no specific names, but I've come across certain scenarios or situations whereby you are sat with a group of people, and sometimes even groups of 6, 7 people, and without fail, every single person is on their own individual devices, glued into social media. They're not talking, they're not having a conversation. The social aspect of that gathering has disappeared by social media. So I feel initially social media was designed as a means to better your social life. Perhaps you have family and friends not in the same country as you, and you want to stay in touch with them. You video call them through Snapchat, for example, or whatever the app may be. And that allows you to keep your social life well and good despite the distance. Whereas over time, the effect that I feel it has had is the fact that it has reduced the social element in real life. And that's my personal assessment. And another assessment that I've come across, and what a lot of young people have actually voiced this concern to myself and to many people who are part of youth challenges, and that is that social media sets standards. You could be sat there at home one day and you can see someone who's the same age as you. For example, you might be 22, you might be 18. You can see someone on social media who is also 18 or who is also 22, and they've got pictures in a Lamborghini, or they're driving a Ferrari, or they might be wearing designer clothes. They might be on lavish holidays in a 5-star resort somewhere in the Middle East, in Dubai, or somewhere in Maldives, wherever it may be. And that lifestyle is being advertised on social media. Now, social media is very good at one thing. It's very good at delivering the persona that you want to deliver. So, for example, I could take a picture of us today in the studio, right? Of yourself and I could post it, and I could write whatever I want to write, and it gives me the freedom to sell an image, to sell an impression. And that is what a lot of influencers these days do. They sell an impression of a very lavish life that they are living. And that somewhat sets expectations to young people as to what their life should look like. And that really, really brings young people down. You come across 20-year-olds who are thinking, well, I'm sat in my parents' house and I don't actually have a job, and my studies, I'm just studying. Whereas there's that guy over there who's my age and he's in Dubai driving a Ferrari. So it definitely sets expectations which cannot necessarily be met. So I just wanted to know your opinion on that, Mr. Aziz.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the difficulties as to why people get addicted is just the format of TikTok and these sort of Instagram. They're very short. So it's like you're looking at different episodes of some sort of drama or some sort of TV show or something. They're very short. So as soon as you finish one, your mind wants to go to the next one and see what's that about. So that's one of the tricky aspects in that the format is such that it makes you keep on going, because you want to see something that's funny, or you want to see something that's useful, and this is a problem. And this is when most people start, they probably can't stop until quite some time gone by, probably a couple of hours or before they realize that they're spending so much time on it. So the format is definitely one inducement that leads to people to do that. Now, secondly, obviously the material subject matter of these videos is such that they will either make you think about doing something which you would ordinarily not think about doing. And then when you look at the number of views, and then you might hear something else about that particular video that other people have started following or doing what they're doing, and it just adds to the general effect, which means that there's some sort of pressure comes on, because everyone starts doing or following that particular style of whatever it is they're doing, or whatever product they've got. So it becomes even like a talking point. So, and this is why social media can be very influential, particularly with young people, and it's all to do with being up to date with things and doing what other people are talking about. And if you don't know about it, you're sort of regarded as someone that's a bit slow or not up to scratch or whatever, and therefore young people feel alienated if they don't actually keep up regularly with social media, because there'll often be aspects or topics there which come up which their friends are talking about, but they don't seem to have any idea about. So there is that sort of feeling of alienation. If they don't keep up with it, then their friends will be talking about it, and they won't know what they're talking about. So there is that aspect as well, and for that reason, it's I think people need to really take a conscientious decision, and and actually say or ask themselves, is productivity, is progress, is it being affected or stunted by these mass viewings of people, because they're spending time which they can more productively spend on something else.
That is very correct, and it's the concept of allocation of time. You only have a specific amount of time available in a day, and is using social media for an hour or 2 hours really the best choice of your time? And on that note, a lot of phones these days have this inbuilt tracker where it tells you how many hours you've spent on your phone, and it's both insightful but also a bit worrying, because my phone tells me how long I've spent on it,
right,
and it actually compares it to the week prior. And it also specifically states where I spent that time on my phone. It could be on a phone call, on YouTube, on maps, navigating directions. So it could be anything. And often I get a pop-up saying, you used your phone 4 hours more than last week. And when I look at it, and it shocks me every time that I've spent 3 hours or 7 hours of my week on social media. And to be honest with you, that is quite a rookie number in comparison to how others may spend time on social media. And in any case, you definitely have to limit the use of it. You definitely have to think about whether there is something more productive you can be doing, whether there's something more progressive you can be doing. And especially for the youth, because the youth are at a stage in their life where their time is of paramount importance. They could spend 2 hours revising for an exam, and they could spend 2 hours on social media. But imagine the effect if you spend the entire 4 hours on social media. So I think it's very hard. Personally, I can vouch for that. It is very hard to reduce the amount of time you spend on your social media apps, because as you mentioned earlier, it is a very, very good resource to keep yourself informed. At the same time, whatever everyone is talking about is available on social media. Oh, did you see this? Did you see that? Did you hear about this? What do you think about this? And it's like, hold on a second, I don't know anything about it because I didn't hear it or didn't come across it. And you can feel quite alienated when you don't know something. So definitely there are many concerns around that. And Mr. Aziz, as I understand it, you of course are a solicitor by profession, and you've handled a lot of defamation cases in your career. What would you say is the role of social media when it comes to defamation cases? Because a lot of youngsters are not using social media responsibly, and often I come across some comments or some statements and I look at them and I think, wow, that's really bizarre. Had you said that to someone face to face, that would have caused a lot of problems. Yeah. But some people are very confident to hide behind a screen and make statements which may be misleading or defamatory. And what I'd like to know is, are there consequences for people who are making these statements on social media platforms?
Yes, that's right, yes. Often what happens is that as you know, things get, circulated a lot in social media. Sometimes you can get news, you can get information that's not true, gets circulated as if it is true, and then what will happen is certain people will pick that up and highlight it and say, look, whatever it is, a comment or whatever, and the person who's the subject matter of that comment, if that person is then what we say in legal terms is suffers serious harm, it could be to their reputation or could be to their, financially, they are then able to pursue a claim for defamation because that particular, social media post or whatever it was, video, it has made them, made others think of them less favorably or less in a good way. And according to the Defamation Act of 2013, things were sort of reformed a bit because prior to that there was a lot of what we call defamation tourism in the UK, in the sense that international people who had been subject of posts which weren't true and ultimately were defamatory, they would often choose England as a place to issue their defamation claim, because apparently it was this country was more easier to start such claims, but since that act of 2013, things have been made more sort of streamlined in the sense that you have to show what we call serious harm. So it can't just be some light comment, because you have to show how it's actually harmed you seriously, and that's why that's cut down probably the number of defamation claims there are. But often it's sort of a public figure, a well-known person. It doesn't have to be. I mean, it could be an ordinary person who perhaps is in a very responsible job, or in the medical field, or could be even in the legal field, and could be in the scientific field, and they've actually been defamed in the sense that someone has said something which has caused them serious harm. So as a result of that, it's sometimes very easy to get caught up in these things, and someone might sort of innocently comment on some subject, make a sort of joke about it, but they'll be also roped in to that claim. So people have to be very careful, and often, as we've seen in the past, people have had to resign from very important positions because they've sent out tweets which they weren't able to back up in terms of showing that it was truthful. So people have to be very careful as to what they do, in fact, post on social media, because it can be subject of defamation proceedings. And if you are a respondent in a defamation proceedings, you could stand up to lose a lot of money. Yeah, definitely, and that really stresses the need to use social media properly, because you will be held liable for any comments which cause serious harm, as you mentioned. Mr. Aziz, we are just going to take a short break. Dear viewers, please stay tuned in, and we will join you after a very short break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.